What is up, everyone? Welcome into the Fight HQ preview for UFC 284. I am Jason Floyd, of course, momentarily joined by my guy, Pete Rogers Jr. As we're here to break down UFC 284 from the DFS perspective, betting perspective, fight breakdowns. Got any questions? Line those up in the chat right now as we're going to be here for the next hour or so. We'll see how long it takes to get through this entire fight card. But, of course, as always, I am joined by the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr. Good afternoon, Pete. Are we staying a little warm there? It looks like you got a little bit of a warm jacket on there.
Yeah, trying to, man. It's been some crazy weather up here. It's actually not too bad now. But, last week was insane with negative temperatures and wind chill like -20, -30, something stupid like that. Right now it's actually warming up, so I'm hoping that winter is in the rear view and we can start moving on to spring weather. We know that you're loving the Florida weather down there and you brag way too often about it. But yeah, man, I'm just enjoying it. Unfortunately, not gonna be able to watch this fight card, but we have a banger. UFC 284, Islam Makhachev, Alexander Volkanovski. Cannot wait to break it down, talk, discuss, see where we differ on some of these fights, and can't wait to see some of these lines that we can expose.
Yeah, I think last week in Discord, you noted how cold it was in Connecticut, and I thought about saying what it was here in Tampa. I said, nah, I'm not going to be an a-hole today. I'm going to be a nice Jason. I'm not going to be an a-hole to Pete.
Rare. What a rarity. But yeah, I will tell you that it was quite cold, and, trust me, man, I wish I was down there rooted in Florida, but for some reason my parents wanted to stay in New England. So that's where we're at.
Yeah. Here in Florida, man, we'll see. It's a definitely not a winter day here in Florida. Definitely not a winter day. But of course, we're going to break this one down for you. Of course, if you do us a favor, if you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know when we are live here on the channel. Of course, you hit that thumbs up. That does help us out a ton. If you're watching this after the fact and you have a comment about something me or Pete have said, leave it in comments. We will answer all your comments there in the comment section below. We appreciate everyone checking out Fight HQ. And of course, if you're not in our Discord, totally free to join. All you got to do is go in there. Great conversation we have with the team. Also, we do have a DraftKings contest up right now. It is a single entry, $10. And we said, you know what? We're going to do winner take all for this one. So you can click that link right there in the YouTube description below. We'll also put that, if you're listening to us on the podcasting platforms after the fact, we'll have that in the show notes as well. And of course, also, if you want to show your support for the show, our friends over at 𝗏𝘀𝐿𝐼 have an offer for our listeners. If you take advantage of that offer they have there in the YouTube description below, that helps myself and Pete out over here. And I will tell you, so Pete, when I started doing my deep dive kind of into the salaries, and the first thing I looked at was the main event. I was like, damn, I had not looked at the betting odds prior to, to seeing the salaries. And so when I saw that 600-700 for Volk, I was like, holy cow, this fight is much closer than Volk being a 3-1 betting underdog.
Yeah, I mean, I believe so. I think that there's going to be significant grappling and wrestling advantage for Islam Makhachev. And, it doesn't take a genius to state that. And I do think that Alexander Volkanovski does a fantastic job at getting back to his feet. So what that can do for us DFS players is it can actually balloon the output of Islam Makhachev when you have a guy who's so well at getting back to his feet in Alexander Volkanovski. I do think that the upper body wrestling is what Islam Makhachev is going to just be extremely superior in. He's going to dominate the clinch. Volkanovski has been taken down in the past, and he gets his underhook great. He really butt scoots to the cage. He posts up on an arm. He frames, and he gets back to his feet. But what I think that can do is it can actually bring Islam Makhachev's takedown numbers to next level. Like, I really think that we can approach rare territory for some of these fighters. And, I don't think that he's even touched on his ceiling as far as takedown numbers. The highest amount of takedowns he's actually landed in the UFC are 5 takedowns against Nick Lentz, who's a phenomenal grappler in his own right. So, you look back and you see against 𝗵𝘀𝘀𝗀𝗏𝘀, and he went 4 of 9, 3 of 6 against 𝗵𝐻𝘀𝑐𝑒 𝗬𝗍. I really feel like we could see, like, no lie, 10 takedowns, unless one takedown is enough, and then he's able to just work his way towards a finish. I don't think that it's going to be as easy as most people think. Like, I think he's going to ragdoll him if it, gets into the clinch. But I don't necessarily know if a finish happens as early as most people think. I think it could be just a wrestling clinic, winning in decisive manner, some 10-8 rounds and all of that. So with all that being said, though, Alexander Volkanovski at 6,700, if he can survive, if he can make this a stand-up battle, if all this jiu-jitsu work with Craig Jones can pay off and he can really just stay out of harm's way, out of dangerous situations, perhaps target some leg locks. I don't think that's going to be the strategy, but it could be like a Hail Mary attempt. But at 6,700, man, you could do enough even in a loss to make it into an optimal lineup. So I'm not going to ignore Alexander Volkanovski at all, but Islam Makhachev is going to be a fighter that I circle and I'm going to prioritize because of the 5 rounds.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking from my perspective, I was like thinking as like, you know, cash game lineups, things along those lines. Even on the FanDuel side of the equation at $13, you get great value. I mean, more times than not, when we're talking about the FanDuel side of the equation in terms of daily fantasy, there usually you don't get value in terms of a main event fighter. I mean, usually, you know, in Islam, by the way, $23, no surprise there. You know, you would expect that maybe he'd be in that $16, $17, $18 range. So there is value over there on the FanDuel side of the equation. You know, look, I think that, you know, and I know one of the questions we got in Discord is kind of talking about, you know, FanDuel and their MVPs. If you think this thing's going to go 5 rounds and you believe that Islam Makhachev is going to say, you know what, I know I'm the superior grappler and I'm just going to grapple the hell out of this dude, you could look at Islam over there. Obviously, you know, with the scoring system over DraftKings, he's much more valuable if this thing is a 25-minute fight. You know, I think overall, I think I'll be under the field, you know, looking at the, you know, ownership projections that we're seeing there on Islam Makhachev. I don't think I want to get that high on Islam Makhachev. But that to me is more about a roster construction more than anything else. Like, look, I think Islam's going to win this fight. My only fear is, and he's made some comments about going up there and wanting to stand up with Alexander Volkanovski. Look, if you tell me this thing is a stand-up matchup, oh God, this has got Alexander Volkanovski's, but I do think overall, as I've taken in a lot of MMA content this week, I do feel like people are kind of, I mean, look, we all know Makhachev, how talented he is as a fighter. And, you know, Javier Mendez made this comment earlier this week. I don't know if you caught this comment. I'll actually play it here. So I played it on my show earlier this week about, his comment about Islam Makhachev.
You know, the thing about Islam Makhachev is he's well-rounded. He's the most well-rounded lightweight champion of all time. That's the beauty about having someone like Islam. We can fight any way we want. It's a pleasure to have that, where you can actually go out there and make a change right as you're walking out to the cage. That's what 𝗍𝗵𝗲 and I did on one of our fights in Las Vegas. So that's how good Islam Makhachev is. We can actually change plans at a turn of a dime, no problem.
Couple of interesting things I thought he said there. A, calling Islam the most well-rounded UFC lightweight champion of time. I started going down that rabbit hole. He may not be wrong, Pete. He may not be wrong. But the other thing he talked about is how having the ability to change the game plan on a moment's notice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that he's one of the most well-rounded, if I'm being honest. I think that he's developing for sure. He has the wrestling dominance that Khabib Nurmagomedov has. His striking is more technical than Khabib Nurmagomedov when he was reigning champ, and I do think that he is better on the feet. He has more variety of attacks as well. Like, we've seen him throw knees, we've seen him throw kicks. I think that could make for some trouble for Alexander Volkanovski in the clinch. Just, you know, kind of leading with his head a lot into some of these shots, a knee up the middle, dipping his head off to the side to a head kick. I don't really think it's going to be much of a striking match. If it is, that's where I do think that Alexander Volkanovski, right down the middle, you know, in between the wide shots of Islam Makhachev, you could see him landing a straight right hand. We did see a fighter in Adriano Martins hop on Islam Makhachev early, land a big shot, and get a TKO finish. But I do think that was prior to the development of Islam Makhachev. With all that being said, I'm actually going to be looking at this ownership of Alexander Volkanovski. It's really damn high. Like, it's really damn high. And you don't think it's that high?
I'm not. No, what I was going to say is I'm not surprised at what it's being projected at right now. I think that's kind of where I expected it to be. Now, look, maybe if, let's just say his salary was $7,400, $7,500, I don't know if the number's that high.
I agree with you, but I mean, like, there's still a decent amount of fights on this card. So 13 fights, it could be a situation where a large portion of the field is kind of, punting with Alexander Volkanovski. And if he just gets absolutely ragdolled for 25 minutes, then that could be a large portion of the field that's completely dead in the water because of a 6,700 fighter. The other flip side to that is that this does touch the later rounds. It does, maintain a stand-up affair for a decent amount, and you have a fighter get 40. What do we need in a loss in for this situation? I'd probably say 45 points minimum. 45 points minimum. And, if he's on his back, that's a lot of control time for Islam Makhachev. I do think he's going to have some reversals. I don't know. I'm going to get to Volkanovski for sure. Me as a fan, I want Volkanovski to knock out Islam Makhachev. Not really a big Islam guy. I think that he's completely dominant, and he's going to win a decision, in fact. But I think that Islam Makhachev can approach Colby Covington, Kamaru Usman takedown numbers where they just completely break the slate, get 140, 160, not even kidding. And I think that if you don't have him and half the field about probably won't have him, I think that could be a mistake.
And just looking at it, plus 215, Makhachev to win via decision over the prop bet over there. I mean, look, it's to me, and I have not started constructing lineups. To me, about being lesser on the field on Islam is more about what type of lineups can I put together. Now, someone asked me in Discord, would you stack this fight in a single entry?
I think I'd say no. It's interesting. I'd probably stack the co-main event if I'm being honest, because I think that could be high volume takedowns for Emmett, high volume strikes and kicks for Yair Rodrigues, and I do foresee that going the distance. Whereas, like, there is a chance that Islam gets one takedown and that's all he needs. He's going to be massive on the mat, but I don't hate this stack. It's cheap enough to make it work.
Yeah, just kind of looking at some of the comments over there. This one from Shannon says, do you think the absence of Khabib will make an impact? Now, for those who are not aware, Khabib has not only retired as a fighter, he's now retired as a coach. He's living at home, being with his family, and kind of the things I'd heard, it was the travel aspect of it that really had gotten to him. He'll be there, quote unquote, in spirit, but he's not there in the corner.
It'd be different if he was rooted in the United States. Like, but having his family in Dagestan, you know what I mean? It's a little bit different. It's tough. If he had family in Vegas or something, and then he could hop on flights and go away for the weekends and be home throughout the week. You know what I mean? It's a little tough and pretty demanding as a coach. A lot of people don't realize it, especially when you have some of the top tier talent under your stable. Umar Nurmagomedov, Islam, the list goes on and on. So I do think that it could have an impact. But that's where Javier Mendez comes in. And Javier Mendez is a fantastic coach. So much experience. Corner Champions is responsible for the development of AKA and whatever. All the success that a lot of these fighters had. Cain Velasquez, Luke Rockhold. It's quite Josh Koscheck. Like, so many fighters. You can keep going on and on about AKA Josh Thompson. So I do think that Islam's in good hands. I would like it if Khabib Nurmagomedov was around more. But it kind of is what it is, and I think that at the end of the day, it's an individual sport, and as long as Islam's been preparing well enough, I think he'll do just fine.
Final thing we'll mention about this fight comes from Shine asking about a prop bet, whether you like it or not. How about Islam via submission, which is plus 150?
I think that's going to be a very common prop bet, and that's kind of a tricky situation where we did see Alexander Volkanovski get put in some horrible positions by Brian Ortega, and Brian Ortega is a submission specialist for sure, was unable to secure some of these submissions, and it looked like Volkanovski was impossible to choke. I do think that this could be where, incorporating ground and pound in a dominant position could lead to a stoppage. So I would probably, if you're going to look for an Islam finish, I would just go inside the distance, truthfully, instead of trying to get a little greedy with the plus money of just a submission. But I don't hate it. I think it's going to be one of the most common prop bets of the entire card.
Something that I have not seen is who will be the referee for this fight.
Yep.
If it is Herb Dean, and last week is an example of this, Herb Dean will let a fight go on a little when we're talking about ground and pound longer than he did at one point. If you didn't see the Steve Mallory 𝗍𝗫𝗂𝗍𝗂𝗍 fight, I just felt like there was a point in that second round where Steve Mallory should have looked up and go, "Hey Herb, what's it going to take?
Yeah.
Do I got to kill the guy?"
That's what you got to do a little bit. You got to give the eyes to the referee, and like some guys do it. They hit him twice, and then they start looking at the referee like begging for a stoppage. But I've done it in the past where I'm like, okay, like because you want to persuade them in a way as well, especially if they're not defending themselves. Plus, time's ticking, and I do think that Steve Mallory should have got the stoppage in. The inconsistency from fight to fight is what's the issue. Like, how many times have we seen Herb Dean stop it for a lot less?
Oh, yeah.
And then now he needs it's crazy. Like you damn near need to completely maul them, and he was mauling them. So I don't even realize how he could not stop that fight, but it is what it is, and it's just inconsistent from fight to fight, which is the most frustrating for fighters.
Now, the co-main event is also a 5-round matchup. The interim featherweight title on the line. Yair Rodrigues taking on Josh Emmett. Yair Rodrigues is a -185 betting favorite, +150 for Josh Emmett. Looking at the DFS salaries, we got $8,500 for Yair on DK, $20 on FanDuel. And for Josh Emmett, he's $7,700 on DK, $17 over on FanDuel. Pete, this is a fight that I truly do believe that this is a fight we got to prioritize for GPPs.
Interesting. It's kind of hard to get away from it just because of the pricing, right? Like we have Yair pretty cheap at 85, and then we also have Josh Emmett. It's going to be one of the most popular underdogs at 7,700, and the underdog actually has the wrestling advantage in this situation. So you and I were kind of touching on this prior to the show, and it's like, yeah, like why just go out there and trade leather with Yair Rodrigues? You saw what that kind of did against 𝗍𝗏𝗀𝗀. It led to a split decision. And a lot of people think that he lost that fight to 𝗍𝗏𝗀𝗀. I think what you can do to put a stamp on a round is by getting a takedown, getting some top control, controlling the fight, basically controlling your opponent to basically put that stamp on that round. So at kicking range, Yair Rodrigues should flow quite well. His kicks, he's so dynamic and tricky, and the volume is pretty impressive. I like Yair Rodrigues to win the bout just because I do think that Emmett can get lured into a brawl and doesn't really go to the takedown well as much as I would like him to. If you go and you look at his takedown attempts, there was one fight in his second fight in the UFC where he really put on his wrestling shoes, and that was against Scott Holtzman. He went 8 of 12 in the takedown department. Massive takedown volume. Outside of that, he attempted 2 against John Tuck, 1 against Desmond Green, 2 against Felipe Aranches, couple fights with nothing, 3 takedown attempts against Michael Johnson, 1 against Shane Burgos, and 4 against 𝗍𝗏𝗀𝗀𝗃. And a lot of times he was unsuccessful. So it's kind of tough because it's all about path to victory. The clear path to victory is by incorporating takedowns and being the better MMA fighter, while Yair Rodrigues is the better striker of the two, the better kickboxer. Man, Yair looked damn good in the short fight against Brian Ortega. And even late against Max Holloway, he scored 81 in a loss. Prior to that, a nice decision win against Jeremy Stevenson, scored 82. I'm leaning Yair Rodrigues, just kind of personal preference, and also a little bias, truthfully, because Yair Rodrigues' coach, Mike Valley, is a friend of mine and one of the coaches I dealt with when I was at the BMF ranch out there in New Mexico. And it's quite impressive what he's doing with his entire team, from Bilal Muhammad, Yair Rodrigues. You got a ton of up-and-coming guys within Valley Flow that I really like and I like circling. So I think that Yair is starting to hit his stride, but this is a close fight. The pricing makes me want to stack it, and I'm probably going to stack this fight more than anything else. And I'm not big of stacking. I just do think that this is going to go 5 rounds. The odds suggest that it's probably going to go to the 5th round. I would agree with that. I'm picking Yair Rodrigues, but there's an argument that Josh Emmett goes out there and just puts together a complete game plan.
As I was thinking about this fight, I was thinking about, could Josh Emmett go the takedown route? But this is the crazy thing. This is going to be his 12th UFC fight this weekend here in Australia. His second UFC fight against Scott Holtzman, he landed 8 takedowns. Since that fight, he has only landed 2.
Yep. That's my fear, is he just doesn't go to it enough. Now he could be forced to by getting hurt and stung on the feet from like knees and kicks to the body and kicks up the middle. And I don't think that many people are going to be too comfortable when the guy's kicking. It's different. You know, I've had training partners of mine say, like, you know, when you're slugging it out punch for punch with somebody, it's different. It can be intimidating, but not as intimidating as somebody that knows how to kick, and they're ripping kicks from such a long range, and they're brutalizing your legs and body and your head. So, like, you know, somebody who comes from an extensive striking background who's really good at kicking, it's helped me out a lot. And I know that Yair is a fantastic kicker. So as long as he stays within the correct range, I think he's going to have success. I love the fight, though. I can't wait to watch this one, even if I got to, you know, watch it after I work.
Do you look at Yair as a guy to target as a FanDuel MVP at $20?
Truthfully, no. And just because, like, I think there's going to be tremendous volume, but it's still a close fight. And what I like to do for captains and FanDuel MVPs and all of that is I like to target fighters that I foresee having a high chance of getting a win, not ones that are in a close 50-50 type of fight. And that's kind of how I view this fight. It's like, I thought this was going to be a pick'em. It's pretty close to it. I mean, Yair's favored a decent amount, but I actually think it's going to be really, really close. I probably like to put a captain or MVP as for like somebody I have tremendous faith in. You know what I mean? Like where I think that they're going to go out there and just completely get rid of their opponent. And, you know, to get different, you can target some of these co-main fights that are 5 rounds. But for me personally, I like to target the big boomer bust within that MVP or captain spot.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that if you're looking to separate yourself from the field, I mean, let's say you're getting into the bigger GPPs and you're only maybe throwing 1 entry or maybe 5 entries. I think you do got to look at it with the game theory of saying, let me get away from the main event and co-main event, because that will allow you to get different with your roster construction. I mean, that's just kind of one game theory to think about as you're developing your rosters out there. Now, I know over on our chat in Discord, people have been asking us about, you know, wants to talk about, you know, super draft picks, prize picks, and also underdog fantasy. That's going to be at the end of the show, as we're going to give you some of the plays we like over there. I know prize picks has a free square on Patrick Mahomes for the Super Bowl on Sunday. So we'll talk about that after we give up our straight up fight picks here later on in the show. Roman, I see your question. We'll get to your question once we start kind of talking about those underdogs of Randy Brown and Francisco Prado. And I will tell you this, I have a feeling, well, because I heard Pete tell me about one of these guys, that's one of those guys does intrigue them there as a betting underdog. But let's get into Randy Brown, as he's going to take on your guy, Jack Della Maddalena. Is Jack Della Maddalena, is he in the Romanov type, man crush list?
He's beyond.
Oh,
Romanov's,
whoa.
yeah. Now it goes 𝗍𝗵𝗀𝗀 𝗬𝗪, and number 2 is Jack Della Maddalena.
Wow, he's past Aspinall too?
Yeah, he's past Aspinall. Yep.
Wow.
And Aspinall's 3. Good. You got great memory, man. And if you've been listening to the show for a long time, appreciate you. We really appreciate you. If you could hit that like button, get us over 50 likes. You would know that all those fighters that Jason talked about are fighters that within their debuts I've been on, and some of them have, gone on to have tremendous success. Romanov's, he lost a step a little bit. But Marcin Tybura can do that to you. And, here we have Jack Della Maddalena stepping up significantly. Let's call it what it is, Jason. Like, this is a significant step up in competition. Debut against Pete Rodrigues, wash him in 259 round 1. Ramzan Emeev, big step up in competition. A fighter that gets really tired but has a tremendous wrestling advantage, washes him in round 1. Danny Roberts, I thought, was a step back in competition. I thought that Ramzan Emeev is better than Danny Roberts, but still finishes him in round 1. The way that Jack Della Maddalena strikes is just so unique. I don't think many fighters strike like him. Tremendous hands, has good head movement, rips and digs to the body. And if you ever got hit with a big body shot, it takes the will right out of you. It makes you start second guessing. And, honestly, it shuts your body down if they hit you correctly. So when you get drilled to the body, your guard's going to drop a little bit, and then Jack Della Maddalena capitalizes on it. Outside of his Contender Series fight, it's been a complete washout, and I actually think that this could be a war, pretty similar to the Contender Series fight. And Randy Brown's a guy that I love too. But let's call it what it is. He's on a 4-fight win streak. He's fought legitimate competition within the UFC. He's 10-4. Jack Della Maddalena is going to, have to keep it on the feet, because I do think that Randy Brown has a sneaky submission advantage over Jack Della Maddalena. The chin is a little questionable for Randy Brown. He has been finished by 𝗉𝗀𝘀𝗍. Nico Price was submitted a long time ago, back in 2016, against Michael Graves. But I think that is irrelevant, because I think this is going to be a stand-up affair with Randy Brown kind of mixing in some dirty clinch work, trying to get the fight to the mat. You might want to stay at range, because he can knock out Jack Della Maddalena. Maddalena took some shots on the Contender Series fight, but I do think that his durability is better than Randy Brown's. I think just everything. The miles are less on Maddalena. If you are not going to threaten him with wrestling, I think it's a matter of time before he processes what's in front of him en route to a striking finish. And I think this is going to be a late finish, because I'm giving Randy Brown as much respect as possible. But I think that Jack Della Maddalena is going to get it done here again. I mean, this is a situation where, are you legit or not? Or is this too much too soon? And if you think it's too much too soon, Randy Brown should be circled. He's on a 4-fight win streak over Alex Oliveira, Jared Gooden, Chaos Williams, 𝗍𝗀𝘀𝗀 𝗀𝗏. The issue I have with Randy Brown is I projected him to actually get a finish over 𝗍𝗀𝘀𝗀𝗀 𝗀𝗏. And I thought that performance was pretty poor to what my expectations were. So give me Jack Della Maddalena at 9,200, one of the most impressive fighters on the card in Perth. I'm going to be targeting him a bunch, and I actually think that the field is going to be doing just the same, and I think it's rightfully so.
It feels like one of those situations where this is the UFC setting him up in this type of spot. Like, that's just, it's one of those feels here. But I mean, look, as you mentioned, it's a step up in competition. You're talking about, in terms of if he's going here, I mean, the $9,200 price tag, $21 on FanDuel. Do you think he pays it off though?
That's the issue, right? Is because he's looked untouchable in the UFC, scored 117 in his debut against Pete Rodrigues, 107 against Ramazan Emeev, 125 against Danny Roberts. I think it's going to be a later finish, if I'm being honest. Like, because Randy Brown's going to stick him with so many jabs, and he's just a very long, rangy fighter, that it's going to take some time for Jack Della Maddalena to kind of process it, figure out the tendencies, and throw a shot, kind of like slip and rip. But I think it's going to be a little bit later. So I'm still getting to him, because we don't know how bad the chin of Randy Brown is. And also, like, it could lead to more knockdowns, because Randy Brown's toughness is just phenomenal, and knockdowns are somewhat broken in DFS. So if he lands two knockdowns, you're probably going to need him, in your lineup, despite these salaries. So I have a sneaky suspicion it's going to be a second or third round finish, which I'm getting to him plenty, but I'm kind of just like game theory wise thinking kind of outside that box. Like, I wish he was like 8,600, then he'd be a lock. 9,200, it's like we got a lot of good 9,000 options this week.
Yeah. There's an option we're going to talk about here momentarily that he's not a 9,000 option. He's close to a 9,000 option. That's intriguing to me. Samuel, appreciate your questions. Of course, we'll get to your questions there towards the end of the show. And of course, if you ever have any content that you want to hear, whether it's on the show or maybe we create some other videos here on this channel, all you got to do is let me and Pete know the type of content you want, as we're here to give you the content that you want here at Fight HQ. We're trying to build this channel up. So if you're not subscribed to the channel, really appreciate if you subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers and that over 4,000 watch hours so we can start to monetize this channel. So appreciate everyone tuning in here. Of course, if you're not in our Discord channel, totally free to join. It's great conversations that we have in there throughout the week. And of course, we'll be in there. I'll be in there tomorrow night, probably a little bit later. I got a birthday party to go to for a family. So I'm trying to get home by about an hour before the pay-per-view starts. So that's kind of what I got going on over there. But we appreciate everyone that's in our Discord channel. Let's move over. Next up, we got a heavyweight matchup. And this is one that, man, I don't know if you're going to feel good going either way on, Pete. We'll find out your take here. That's Justin Tafa and Parker Porter. Justin Tafa, a -130 betting favorite, +110 for Parker Porter. Then we look at the DFS salaries, $8,400 for Tafa on DK, $16 on FanDuel. And for Parker Porter, $7,800 on DK, $15 on FanDuel.
Yeah, I had this fight circled, and I think it's a tricky fight. And the reason it's a tricky fight is because Justin Tafa is a guy who just hits so damn hard. Um, but he's relatively green in his MMA career, if we're being honest. In comparison to Parker Porter, he's 5-3, whereas Parker Porter's 13-7. Parker Porter's fought some legitimate competition and has seen it all coming from New England. Like, he's had to fight some tough fights. He at one point fought John Jones, which is kind of crazy. But like throughout his entire career, we've seen him. He's even fought Gabriel Gonzaga. So like he's been around for a long time. He knows what he does well. He throws really, really good boxing combinations. And then in addition to that, he has probably some of the best. I got to be careful with this. Yeah, I'll probably say it. Some of the best jiu-jitsu for a heavyweight, just because like he recognizes position. I think that he should have got some finishes. Like I thought that he was supposed to finish 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝗏 𝗠𝗠𝗔. I thought that was kind of, I didn't like how he didn't get the finish there. Chase Sherman, I thought he was going to be able to get the finish there. Josh Parisian. But those three fighters are tough. Two of those fighters are tough MMA fighters, and that's Parisian and Sherman. Losing to Jailton Almeida in round one, Jailton's doing that to everybody. He's going to be a name to watch for the foreseeable future. The issue with this fight, right, is Parker Porter could be the better minute winner, and that's what I'm projecting over Justin Tafa. But all it takes is one shot from Justin Tafa to knock you out. So I actually anticipate Parker Porter walking down Justin Tafa, throwing higher volume, similar to Jared Vanderaa. And Jared Vanderaa is not a good heavyweight, in my opinion. And he was able to, basically double the output of Justin Tafa throughout the entire contest. If Tafa threw 15, Jared Vanderaa threw 30. So if you can have better pace and volume than Justin Tafa, you're able to beat him in a decision. I just worry that Parker Porter, throughout his entire tenure, been around for a long time, one big shot from Justin Tafa in Australia is all it's going to take. So Parker Porter is going to be an underdog play that I'm going to actually suggest as a fighter who can get a significant amount of points because of volume. Also some sneaky takedown upside if he gets the fight to the mat, with some sneaky submission upside. And he's going to attempt takedowns. He attempted 8 against 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝗏 𝗠𝗠𝗔, only landed 2. 8 against Chase Sherman, only landed 1. Went 2 of 4 against Josh Parisian. If he gets on top of Justin Tafa, this could be pretty ugly for Justin Tafa. But like I said, and basically kind of to summarize everything, Parker Porter's probably going to be the better fighter throughout until he gets hit with a big shot. So I'm getting to both of them, but I'm going to suggest that Parker Porter is going to win.
Yeah, this is what as I was hearing you talk about, breaking down the thought, and right when you started mentioning about sneaky takedown upside for Parker Porter, I started thinking FanDuel at $15.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, that's like your territory playing on FanDuel. But I like it, and I don't trust Parker Porter, but at this point, I don't trust any heavyweights. I just don't. Like they literally just like, I thought I could trust Romanov, and I can't trust Romanov. I can't trust any of these heavyweights. Like even Marcin Tybura last week, thought he looked terrible until round 3 when he actually did the entire game plan I thought he was going to do. And then he was very close to getting a submission win over 𝗵𝗀𝗄𝗏. It was like, where was that? Round 1 and 2. Wait, like I don't even know what he was doing. It was like luring him into a striking mindset, and then round 3, like if that's your game plan, it's silly. Like go out there and have the clear path to victory and try to attempt to get a finish. But yeah, I'm going to go with Parker Porter. Could be hometown bias. If you want to just be kind of neutral to that, just go 50-50 on the fight. I have a sneaky suspicion that it's going to be a part of the optimal lineup. And Justin Tafa, man, when he threw a head kick over Harry Hunsucker and scored 103, got a KO over Juan Adams, scored 104. But this is the same guy that lost 2 decisions to Carlos Felipe and Jared Vanderaa. So I'm going to be picking Parker Porter.
As if people are like myself, that I love to color code my documents. I print them up, and when I'm developing roster, I'm color coding things. And like this will be under the color code boom bust. Like, because I feel like that's the way to describe this. Either I think one guy's going to probably score really well, and the other one may not. So it's a little fear for me in terms of this one. Let's move over to the next one. We got a light heavyweight matchup: Jimmy Crute and Alonzo Menified. Jimmy Crute, a -185 betting favorite, +150 for Alonzo Menified. Crute 8,600 on DK, $17 on FanDuel, while Alonzo Menified is $7,613 on FanDuel. Pete, what's your thoughts on these 205-pounders?
I can't trust either one, if I'm being honest, and admittedly, I struggle with this fight. Jimmy Crute's a guy that I had with pretty high ceiling within the division. Submitted Paul Craig in his debut. That was fantastic. He's able to get takedowns at such a high rate, and when he lost to 𝗍𝗍 𝗠𝗠𝗏 via submission in round 1, I was quite surprised. Followed that up with 2 wins, 2 finishes, one over 𝗍𝗏𝗀𝗀 𝗍𝗀𝗀𝗀 and a knockout finish over Modestas Bukauskas. Against 𝗍𝗏𝗀𝗀 𝗍𝗀𝗀𝗀, he went to the takedown well, got 8 of 10 takedown attempts. But most recently, he's on a skid where he lost to TKO to Anthony Smith and then was knocked out against Jamahal Hill. And I'll tell you something that I don't trust with Jimmy Crute. It's his durability. This is a guy that's renowned to have leg injuries throughout his entire grappling career. Pretty similar to Dan Kelly. But if you're out there and you're chopping leg kicks, you saw what Anthony Smith was able to do. Hit him with some brutal leg kicks, gave him some drop foot. But prior to that, it seems like he has a questionable chin, Jason. Anthony Smith stung him with a jab and almost sat him down. Stung him with several jabs throughout that. And it was like he was getting flashed every time he was getting jabbed, which was quite surprising. And then when he fought, Jamahal Hill, no matter what Jamahal Hill hit him with, rocked him, knocked him down, and knocked him out in 48 seconds. So I think that if Jimmy Crute stays in front of Alonzo Menified, one blitz from Alonzo Menified is going to be all that it needs. And Alonzo Menified starts almost all of his fights the same way. Touches gloves, throws a massive right hand followed by a left hook almost every single time to kind of set the tone and get that early respect. Menified's a guy that I'm circling as one of my favorite underdogs on the slate. But with that being said, I don't trust him either. I think that there's going to be a time when somebody breaks Alonzo Menified. I have concerns about his cardio. I have concerns about his grappling if he's on his back. I have concerns about his coaching. Having Pat Barry, Hyper Die around him. I don't know, man. That just seems weird to me. No offense to Pat Barry, but it just seems so strange. And I do think that, Jimmy Crute can pick up a win here if he repeatedly goes to the takedown well and then starts to fatigue Alonzo Menified. He could break the slate. But I think the more likely situation is that Jimmy Crute tries to get a feel for it on the feet before he starts shooting takedowns, gets stung with some big shots, and gets knocked out relatively quickly. So I'm going to go with Alonzo Menified as the lean, but I don't trust either one of these fighters. I like the under 2.5. I might even like the under 1.5. This is going to be a massive score for one of these fighters. I'm going to lean the underdog in Alonzo Menified.
I was actually just looking at the over-under numbers on this fight. Under one, by the way, I'm sure you could probably hear that. You can tell I live near Air Force Base. Under 1.5, -143, +108 if you want to take the over 1.5. The under 2.5 rounds, -315, +215 on the over 2.5 rounds. So that kind of tells you where the betting public believes this fight is not going the distance here, but could be another, I've always had a concern with Alonzo Menified is if this thing hits minute 8, minute 9, 10, 11, so on and so forth, is that blitzing attire that, that full volume pace he has, is that gas tank going to be there?
Yeah, I don't think it will be. I'm telling you, somebody's going to break Alonzo Menified, and I've been picking against him in some matchups just because I think that certain fighters can really test him in ways that work against his strengths. So when you start testing somebody's weaknesses all the time, their cardio systems are not accustomed to this. And if he has to constantly get up from a heavy Jimmy Crute takedown, let's say Jimmy Crute lands 8 takedowns, I think Alonzo Menified gets finished because he's just going to be so labored from all of that. You saw what William Knight was able to do. William Knight was able to get some takedowns and engage in a war, hit and hurt Alonzo Menified numerous times. And Menified, whether he was still rocked or so fatigued that he looked wobbly on the feet, there's a world where Jimmy Crute's talented enough to avoid the damage of Menified and then similar to how my friend Brennan Ward did against 𝗍𝗵𝗂 𝗠𝗠𝗅, incorporate wrestling early, fatigue your opponent. When they're fatigued, now beat the heck out of them standing up. And that worked wonders for Brennan Ward. And a similar game plan could actually work towards Jimmy Crute getting his hand raised. But I'm going to lean the underdog in Alonzo Menified.
Next up, we got another 205-pound matchup. We got Tyson Pedro taking on the returning Modestas Bukauskas. Tyson Pedro, a -225 betting favorite. 8,900 DK, $18 on FanDuel. Yeah, apparently they are doing a lot a lot of takeoffs and landing here in South Tampa. Modestas Bukauskas plus 190 betting underdog. $12 on FanDuel, 7,300 on Modestas Bukauskas. I mentioned about there's a fighter right around this 9,000 mark that is truly intriguing to me. And Tyson Pedro, I heard someone else talk about this week. Whoever is around Tyson Pedro, they find him the most ideal matchups.
Fantastic matchmaking. It's like if Jason Floyd was your manager. They're just getting fantastic matchups. Like I will tell you that Tyson Pedro is in a significant spot to get another victory here, and he's looked career best, man. Like back-to-back finishes over 𝗍𝗵𝗀 𝗬𝗏 and 𝗵𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗏𝗀𝗀. He's very patient, and against the guy Modestas Bukauskas, who actually is returning to the UFC after having a severe knee injury where 𝗍𝗏𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 just completely, oblique stomped him in the knee. I thought his career might have been done. Outside the UFC, picked up a very, very nice finish with a right hand knockout. I just think that his path to victory is kind of winning a decision against Tyson Pedro. And hear me out. He can win a decision as long as he out-volumes Pedro. And if you go back and you look at Tyson Pedro in 𝗍𝗍𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 and 𝗍𝗵𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 performances, he doesn't throw that much. 29 significant strikes thrown in round 1 against 𝗍𝗍𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, 11 thrown against 𝗍𝗵𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀. 29 with 4 minutes and 55 seconds. That volume's not astounding, but he was still winning the fight. And I actually think that the coaches want him to keep getting some of that experience under the lights, especially because, you want to see how you feel in round 2 and round 3. So don't rush anything. And he hasn't been rushing anything. He buries leg kicks phenomenally, and I think that he could hurt Modestas Bukauskas to the legs, followed up by knocking him out. I mean, Bukauskas was knocked out against Jimmy Crute, whose specialty is grappling. So I'm not backing Modestas Bukauskas. I think that Pedro is going to get another victory here, probably round 2, round 3. But if this actually touches the later rounds, I'm not surprised because Bukauskas moves well and he might throw better volume. I mean, he threw 49 significant strikes against Andreas Michailidis in round 1. So I think this is going to be Tyson Pedro just having the more significant shots en route to a finish. But his patience could actually work against us DFS players. That's my only worry.
Yeah, I mean, Modestas Bukauskas is a guy that I've had a chance to talk to countless times, but I just kind of feel like this just isn't a great matchup for him here. That's why Tyson Pedro, to me, like when we talk about building a core lineup, Tyson Pedro will be a core play for me in terms of this one. Now, before we move over to the next matchup, I got to bring in a little bit of a guest analysis in here. Some of you have maybe seen or heard this guest analysis, and that is from 𝗍𝗪𝗍𝗀 𝗬𝗪𝗍𝗀.
Josh Culibao versus Melsik Baghdasaryan. Let's count it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. White man with 8 consonants in his last name. He is not losing. Definitely not to a non-white guy named Josh.
Bro, when I heard that the first time, I was cracking up laughing. So damn good.
Oh, 𝗍𝗪𝗍𝗀. 𝗍𝗪𝗍𝗪 is he is hilarious, man. And if you look at his content, he calls it the unprofessional breakdown. And yes. I think that is the perfect title for it, and it's fantastic. I would agree, though. I like Melsik Baghdasaryan. He's a fantastic striker. Josh Culibao is a fighter that actually surprises us. You know what I mean? Like he had a draw against Charles Jourdain, and it was primarily because of just picking up a knockdown. And then I believe there's a point deduction. I don't really remember. Picked up a decision over Xiaoyi Lan, scored only 58, split decision over Sung Woo Choi. But guess what? landed 2 knockdowns, which completely surprised me. I don't think that he's going to be able to knock down Melsik's Baghdasaryan here. Melsik's stand-up is completely next level. Phenomenal kickboxer. Needs to keep the fight on the feet. So he needs to defend takedowns just like he did against Bruno Souza, where he defended 4 of them. I actually think that Melsik's going to pick up a stoppage here over Josh Culibao. I think that it's going to be like a knee to the body and followed up by some ground and pound. So give me Melsik Baghdasaryan here at 8,000. I like him much more. Even if he wins only a decision, I'm okay with it because, I'm just going to take the W and move on. I think that he shouldn't be the slight underdog on DraftKings. But I do feel like the field's going to agree with me, and they're going to like Melsik a little bit more than Josh Culibao.
I know it won't happen, but man, UFC, put that 𝗍𝗫 audio on the broadcast. Just go ahead and do it. Just go ahead and put it up there. And but $15 each way over on FanDuel. So if you're looking to save a little bit of a salary here over on FanDuel, $15, you do like it there. And in terms of ownership that we're seeing, whether we're talking about DraftKings or FanDuel, not really anything significant. So it could be something that you do target in terms of that. Let's move over. Next up, we got a flyweight matchup. Kleydson Rodrigues taking on Shannon Ross. 8,800 for Kleydson Rodrigues, 7,400 for Ross. 20-19 over on FanDuel, and Rodrigues is a minus 325 betting favorite. If you like the underdog here in Shannon Ross, he's plus 270, Pete.
I mean, I think that Shannon Ross is going to bring it, and he can bring it and just get in your face and make this a firefight. He was doing well on the Contender Series in some moments, mainly in the early portion of round 2, but he was knocked down several times, and I think now debuting against one of the prospects from the Contender Series in Kleydson Rodrigues, many people, including myself, didn't think that he was going to lose to CJ Vergara. Granted, it was a split decision loss. Still scored 60 points. But if you can bring a tremendous pace against Kleydson Rodrigues and you're not terrible on the mat, I think that you can be a threat to beat him. Kleydson Rodrigues went 2 of 7 against CJ Vergara with 3 minutes of control time. I like Kleydson Rodrigues to win this bout. I feel like he can win a decision or a late round stoppage. But, I mean, it's not a priority for me. And typically flyweight fighters aren't priorities for me. I do think that this is a complete mismatch as long as Kleidson's in shape. I like him here at 8,800. There's just some other fights that I'm attracted to. And this could be a situation where like Tyson Pedro and Kleydson Rodrigues, 8,800 and 8,900, are kind of going lost in the shuffle, just completely overlooked in that high 8,000 range. I'm going to get to Kleydson, and I'm going to get to Tyson Pedro, but, I mean, like, I don't know. I feel like there's some other better boom-bust fights. This could be complete dominance from Kleydson, though, so I'm picking him to win. I'm not really convinced it's the best DFS score. I'm projecting something in the 90s.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather get the Tyson Pedro just because of the knockout upside. I mean, we're talking about 205-pound fighters versus flyweight fighters, and someone hockey freak Sean asked about does Pedro KO him in the first because of low volume? I mean, look, as I'm thinking about rostering Tyson Pedro, I'm thinking about first, early, second round finish. Hopefully, it's a first round finish to get us some more points there. But it's one of these things of flyweights. God, I find myself not trying to go all in on them.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, and you could do worse than getting to a flyweight underdog. And I hate kind of having that on paper analysis because on paper these fights don't turn out how some of them project. On paper, a lot of these fights don't look that interesting, and then you actually watch the fights, you're like, oh my gosh, anything can happen in there. But certain weight classes and women's MMA and flyweights tend to have some more underdogs. It goes flyweights, women's MMA, and heavyweight MMA tend to have more underdogs that come through other than, besides some other weight classes. So I don't hate the Shannon Ross hometown rub if it's a close, high-volume affair. I won't get to it and prioritize it a lot. They're better underdogs that I'm kind of focused on, and one we're going to get to.
And we're going to get to that one right now here. We got Jamie Mullarkey taking on Francisco Prado. Prado, 7,500, 8,700 for Mullarkey on DraftKings, 18 and 11 respectively on FanDuel. Jamie Mullarkey, a minus 265 betting favorite. I remember Jamie Mullarkey's last fight against Michael Johnson. I'm sitting there going, man, takedown city. And then he gets dropped early on in the fight. You're like, oh crap. Oh crap, this ain't good. And you know what? And kudos to him, man. He stood toe to toe with Michael Johnson.
Yeah, he's a beast. Like, I love Jamie Mullarkey. He's an absolute beast. And he's able to win some of these wars and firefights by initiating takedowns and getting and scoring them. The issue I do have with Jamie Mullarkey is he gets hit so much, and he's willing to bite down on that mouthpiece and kind of have that coin flip 50-50, let's see who's tougher type of mindset. And, that's good. But at some point, your body's taking so much damage and you're starting to get dropped in favorable matchups. I don't know, man. It just seems like a tendency, like Jamie Mullarkey gets hurt every fight, and then sometimes he's able to come from behind, besides the Jalen Turner fight, and put it together. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that this kid, this little, shouldn't even say little, this prospect, Francisco Prado, I think he's legitimate, man. I really think he's legitimate. Fantastic striking, bombs away. Like, they're gonna engage in some crazy exchanges. He throws tremendous punches. His kicks are unbelievable from a Taekwondo background, so his kicks are phenomenal. I wouldn't be surprised if he lands a wheel kick, spinning hook kick to the head of Jamie Mullarkey, or a spinning back kick to the body, and just completely takes the fight out of Jamie Mullarkey. Because that's what you got to do for certain fighters like Jamie Mullarkey. You know that they're going to be able to take some shots. They may get dropped, but they're going to keep fighting. So what you do to a guy that's so tough mentally is you start going after the body, and you make the body basically make the decision for them. I think that's what's going to happen here. I'm going to project a Francisco Prado knockout over Jamie Mullarkey. And this is where understanding how to play DFS and understanding how to bet is completely different. I like the under in this fight, right? So if I was betting or putting this on a parlay, outside of a late Jamie Mullarkey coming from behind and getting a finish, I would just rather play the under and sit back and watch the fireworks. But for DFS, you have to find underdogs that are going to fight for your dollar. And I think that Francisco Prado in his debut is going to rise to the occasion. So give me Francisco Prado here. It may be like I might regret this on Sunday, but I actually think that Prado's ready for the UFC. So give me Prado.
You mentioned about the unders in this matchup, and Shine asking about, is under 2.5 the betting play here? And looking at the under 2.5, so you got minus 165, and the under 1.5, you can get plus money at plus 123.
Yeah, I think it's going to be crazy. I'd go under 2.5 to be safe. I try not to get too greedy. You know what I mean? Like, under 2.5, be safe. And then if you pair that with something else, or even if you just put large money on that under 2.5, that's better than losing out by a couple seconds. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what you don't want to, you don't want it to be like late into round 2 and you're like, why didn't I just play the under 2.5? So for me, I like to play a little safer with stuff like that. But yeah, I think it's going to be crazy. And if Francisco Prado's unable to get the finish, that could be typical Jamie Mullarkey fashion. Late round finish, comes from behind, gets it done for you. But Prado's going to be one of my favorite underdogs on the entire slate.
Next up, we got Jack Jenkins taking on Don Shainis. Jack Jenkins is a minus 340 betting favorite, plus 275 for Don Shainis. 9,300 for Jenkins on DK, $22 on FanDuel. And then for Don, he is 6,900 on DK, $9 on FanDuel. I spoke to Don probably about, it's probably been about 3-4 weeks ago at this point now. I did have to ask the question of, hey, what's going on with training? Because he had moved to Missouri to train at Glory. And of course, we all know what happened there. So he is now back in the Northeast training where he has been training. But I thought one of the more interesting things that he said to me, Pete, was he doesn't, even though Jack Jenkins, went the takedown route in his Contender Series matchup, he does not think that's going to be the case here.
Yeah, I mean, Jenkins doesn't go after takedowns like a normal wrestler would. He uses his Muay Thai and his trips and the upper body attacks to really land takedowns. And it's more so to kind of just, get into an advantageous position after he's completely dismantling you on the feet. I think that Jenkins is a fantastic fighter. Excellent Muay Thai. Very, very good Muay Thai. And, he reminds me, and the name is escaping me right now, Jason, but he reminds me of the guy who just won the PFL championship with similar style Muay Thai. And he throws knees up the middle. He butchers his opponents. And he's just, as long as he can keep it upright, I think he's going to win this fight over Shainis. And for people that don't know Shainis, he's much better than how he looked against 𝗍𝗍𝗂𝗍𝗍 𝗍𝗓, where it only lasted 30 seconds and he was submitted relatively quickly. But like, Shainis is a fantastic pressure wrestler if he can get into good positions. The Achilles heel for Shainis is that he takes tremendous damage on the feet. And after he takes so much damage on the feet, sometimes he'll get TKO'd in a situation like that, or, he'll cut open quite easily. I think Jenkins is going to butcher him, and this could lead to a higher score. But if Shainis gets on top, you could see, the ground and pound open something up for Shainis, and Jenkins gets submitted just like he did back early on in his professional career. But I'm projecting Jack Jenkins one-way traffic, keeps it on the feet, butchers Shainis, and really is hitting his stride. I think it's just too many X factors for Shainis. Like that whole gym debacle and complete situation around Glory MMA, like that's a lot for a fighter to go through, especially when you thought that you're finally finding your UFC camp. Rob Wilkinson is his name. Thank God. Thank you, DJ too. You knew exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah, when I talked to Don about it, and like I didn't really want to hammer on this Glory point, but I knew it was something that I had to ask. I had to ask the question. Looking at the prop bets, maybe you like Jenkins via TKO KO plus 140 in terms of that betting prop over there. But yeah, man, it's an interesting aspect of what's going on there. And, speaking of Glory, because I was kind of doing some advance of looking at some Bellator events. 𝗍𝗪𝗀𝗧𝘂𝗏𝗏 𝗏𝗏 is still training at Glory. So that's going to be kind of interesting to see whether or not James Krause is in his corner come March 10th.
That's weird. I thought is it only for UFC that he got revoked?
But yeah, Bellator never came out and said one way or the other. Scott Coker basically essentially said, hey, that's a commission thing. We'll lean on the commission, so whether or not they're going to license James Krause. But yeah, that was
they better hope they don't come to New England. I'll tell you that, because he can get licensed here. You think he would?
I don't know. Okay. In terms of the regular me and you were both thinking of, I've had that conversation, but he didn't give me an answer one way or the other.
Okay. Interesting. I do think that's quite interesting. It's an opportunity for some of these Glory fighters to actually have a platform to perform. So from a business standpoint, maybe it makes sense, but also you got to be very careful with this when you're talking about foul play.
A lot of the Glory fighters, I think ultimately you're going to see them end up either at Factory X or Team Oyama in California under Carl Oyama. David Onama, the featherweight, he is now at Factory X. Also now at Factory X is Vanessa Demopoulos. Vanessa was at Fight Ready, and let's just say there was an issue between the owner of Fight Ready and a certain management company.
So weird. The MMA, man, it's a shiesty business. We know this.
Yeah, it's a weird business. Move over next one. We got a female matchup. 𝗵𝘀 𝗶𝘀𝗎𝗓 taking on Elise Reed. 𝗵𝘀 𝗶𝘀𝗎𝗓, a minus 315 betting favorite, plus 260 for Elise Reed. 𝗵𝘀 𝗶𝘀𝗎𝗓 is 9,000 on DK, 19 on FanDuel, and then Reed, she's $7,210 on FanDuel. Pete, can you talk me off being over the field on 𝗵𝘀?
I mean, I love 𝗵𝘀 𝗶𝘀𝗎𝗓. I think that she hasn't found a finish inside the UFC yet, and I do think it's coming. But, in women's MMA, finishes are somewhat rare, especially the lighter weight classes. I do think that it's a perfect contrarian play to get to 𝗵𝘀 𝗶𝘀𝗎𝗓, because I don't think that Elise Reed's on the same level as her at all. Like, at all. I think that we're going to see 𝗵𝘀 just completely dismantle her on the feet, probably knock her down a couple times from push kicks up the middle. If this ends up into the clinch, you could see 𝗵𝘀 𝗶𝘀𝗎𝗓, really put together some takedowns also. Not like traditional wrestling takedowns, but more so like Thai fighters in the clinch, tripping you and just off-balancing you en route to just one-way traffic. I don't think that Elise Reed's really going to have much for 𝗵𝘀 𝗶𝘀𝗎𝗓. And I hate to say it, but I think 𝗵𝘀 𝗶𝘀𝗎𝗓 is one of the best parlay pieces on the card. As far as a DFS play, she hasn't done it. She just hasn't done it. And it's almost like, well, is this the time? Do you want to be early or do you want to be late to the party? She scored 94 against Denise Gomez, 91 against Sam Hughes, You saw what Sam Hughes did to Elise Reed. I do think that there is potential for 100 points. If I had to bet on it or bank on it, I'm going to say no, just as history has shown. She hasn't done it yet. But I do think that this is a very, very favorable matchup for her. I don't think that Elise Reed's all that talented. And Loma Lookboonmee should make it look relatively easy in there. So I was kind of just doing some hand builds, and I like hand building a lot nowadays. And Lookboonmee's a fighter I just kept landing on. I'm like, yep, fine with that, fine with that. I'm just going to hope she can get to 100 points.
Yeah, it's when we talk about PrizePicks and Underdog Fantasy, she is someone that I will be targeting over on those sites here this weekend. Now, talk about targeting a fight. This next fight to me has got GPP written all over it. I want to have both sides of this fight, Pete. Shane Young and Blake Builder. Shane Young a minus 140 betting favorite, plus 120 for Blake Builder. Then over on DK, 8,300 for Young, 16 on FanDuel, and Blake is 7,900 on DK, $14 on FanDuel. I went all across this fight because, like, to me, I don't think this fight is going the distance. I think someone's getting KO'd within 10 minutes.
Yeah, I love this fight for GPPs. So I circled this one. I circled the Jamie Mullarkey fight, Francisco Prado, Blake Builder, Shane Young fight. Excuse me. My issue here is that Shane Young does not appear to be dangerous. He appears to be consistent in certain matchups, but he doesn't appear to be dangerous. The Rolando D fight, his second fight in the UFC, is one where he actually did really well, and he scored 122 points. And why is that? Well, he threw 215 significant strikes, landed 104 of them. Also went to the takedown well a little bit, only landed 1 of 5, but he was able to get a second round finish. So when you mix and incorporate high volume with a finish, you're going to break the slate. Outside of that, he was completely dismantled in his debut against Alexander Volkanovski. Can't really fault him for that. Knocked out relatively quickly, just a little bit over 1 minute against Ludovic Klein with head kick into a barrage of punches. And then he lost to Omar Morales in a low volume, tentative fight. And that's what I look at Shane Young and I see now in his fight film. It's like he's so tentative and he's worried about, he's fighting to not lose. He's not fighting to win. And that's the issue where when you are, knocked out and you're coming off of so much damage and your career's on the line, there's a lot of added pressure. So when you go out there and you're trying to just be safe and avoid, those high volume, like when he did against Rolando D, he bit down on that mouthpiece and he got into the phone booth and he just completely traded. I don't think that he's, from the body language and everything, unless he completely turns everything around, I think he's going to lose. I think he's going to lose here to, Blake Builder, a guy that actually hit a huge underdog ticket on his Contender Series fight. Blake Builder throws heat on the feet, throws tremendous hands. And guess what? He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he will have the takedown advantage here against Shane Young. The issue is the strength of schedule. It's been decent, but if you go back and you look at his regional tape against 𝗍𝗫𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 𝗍𝗫, he was knocked down 3 times in round 1. 3 times. And it didn't even look like some of those shots were the most significant. So, on one hand, I really want to pick Shane Young just because I think that any shot can sit Blake Builder down. And just, being in the UFC and this being in his hometown, he could rise to the occasion when his job's on the line. But from everything I've seen and the stride that I think Blake Builder is hitting, I got to go with Blake Builder. It's got to be a lean towards Blake Builder. He's going to be one of the most, popular underdogs, at least for me. And when I look at the ownership or what we're projecting for ownership, I'm really surprised. Like, I really am surprised, Jason. I thought that more people would be believers, but this could be because of that 𝗍𝗫𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 𝗍𝗫 fight where Builder gets dropped 3 times, you think the fight's done. But certain fighters respond to that in certain ways. And Blake Builder's got that dog in him, stood back up, bit down on that mouthpiece, and ended up picking up a finish and knocked down 𝗍𝗫𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 in the second round and then finished him in the third round, gets takedowns when he wants to. So multiple paths to victory here for Blake Builder. Just has to avoid the big shot. But I think Shane Young's going to be a little too tentative. So give me Builder here at 7,900.
Yeah, I'm with you as well. I like this for GPP, and I was actually surprised this fight did not have more ownership than what is being projected in terms of this one. And you talked about, fights I'm going to be targeting. This is going to be a fight that we are going to be targeting there. And of course, if you want to show your support here for the channel, you want to get our friends over at 𝗃𝗃. Full disclosure, we still have access to all the tools and data over at 𝗃𝗃, but it is a great way to show your support for what me and Pete do here, as they do got a special there for the Fight HQ. Just look down in the description if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're listening to this on the podcast channels, this show is available via podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, everywhere you can get podcasts. It'll be in the show notes as well. And of course, be sure to join our Discord channel. Great conversation in there, and of course, it's free to hit that thumbs up button. Be sure to do that, and rating, review, all that does help us out a lot as well. Now, our opening fight of the night, P, will have our biggest salary fighter, Zubarah, at $9,600, $22 on FanDuel, so second highest over on FanDuel. He's a minus 580 betting favorite, taking on Brenner here, who's a plus 440 betting underdog. He is $8 on FanDuel, $6,600 over on DraftKings. One thing to note about this, Zubarah now up at 155 pounds after he had the issues of competing at 145 pounds and making weight. So that to me is going to be kind of an interesting thing to see. The weigh-ins today, the official weigh-ins are at 6 p.m. Eastern time. The ceremonial weigh-ins will be at 10 p.m. Eastern time. I am interested to see what Zubarah looks like on the scale at 155 as opposed to what we saw him at 145, or attempting to make 145.
Yeah, I mean, I like 𝗵𝗀𝗀 𝗀𝗃𝗃 here. I don't like odds that are approaching crazy, like 6-1 favorites and all that. But, we did have Zubarah supposed to face a much tougher foe. And now you have Elvis Brenner stepping up on short notice. So, I don't think that this kid, Elvis Brenner, is all that good. And I think that he could be in some fun matchups. But we talk about 𝗵𝗀𝗀 𝗀𝗃𝗃 was supposed to face off against Joel Alvarez. Joel Alvarez is really damn talented. That would have been a tricky fight, and I probably would have been siding with Joel Alvarez if I'm being honest. Elvis Brenner, when he throws, he hits really hard. It looks like he has a questionable gas tank. Pretty sloppy takedown attempts. Can get put on his back and grounded, pounded. He seems fine when he's going forward, but if somebody presses the action and they throw towards him, he does seem like he gets a little flustered. Never mind if they start incorporating takedowns. Outside of a Hail Mary, something stupid that shouldn't lands, I think that 𝗵𝗀𝗀 𝗀𝗃𝗃 wins this fight, it's close to 10 out of 10 times. Like, I'm serious. I think that the skill gap is pretty significant. We've seen 𝗵𝗀𝗀𝗀 𝗀𝗃𝗃, knock out some pretty impressive fighters. He knocked out Kevin Aguilar in round 1. I think Kevin Aguilar is a tougher fighter than this Elvis Brenner. We've seen him pick up other knockdowns. He picked up 2 against Kevin Aguilar. He knocked down Lerone Murphy one time, just was hurting Ricardo Ramos on the feet, and got caught in a spinning elbow, and the fight ended up going the distance, and it was still a pretty decisive victory for 𝗵𝗀𝗀𝗃𝗃 𝗀𝗃𝗃. The issue here is, do you think he pays off the price tag? And I think he does, as long as he doesn't get hurt, and then it's like, I'll just coast to a win. He attempted 8 takedowns against Lerone Murphy. In a split decision draw, he scored 55. We need 120 plus. So we either need him to take Elvis Brenner to Takedown City, which he's more than capable of, but we'd like him to take him to Takedown City en route to a finish also, whether it's a submission finish or a TKO finish. So I think the salary's fine. I wish it was cheaper, just like because I don't know. He hasn't attempted a submission attempt inside the UFC. So outside of him not getting a finish, a TKO finish, I don't know. We'll see. It could just be like takedowns galore. 𝗵𝗀𝗀𝗃𝗃𝗃 𝗀𝗃𝗃 breaks the slate, but I'm not going to be getting to Elvis Brenner at all.
Yeah, to me, it's just more of that. It's that price tag. And kind of like the conversation we had at the beginning of the show talking about Islam is in terms of that price point, what's that roster construction look like? I'll be crunching lines here later on today to kind of see what I get to. And I'll be interested in kind of see ultimately, in terms of whether I'm playing in a 20 max or 150 max of how much of 𝗵𝗀𝗀 that I'm going to get into. But Pete, let's get to our straight up fight picks right here. Of course, we're going to get our straight up fight picks. Then we're going to talk about the props over there at Super Draft, Prize Picks, and Underdog Fantasy. Then we'll answer any questions that we have not gotten to that are in the chat or in Discord. So if you want to leave a question, do that right now. So let's start right up at the top of the main event. I got 𝗃𝗀𝗄 Makhachev retaining the UFC lightweight title.
Yeah, I don't want it to happen, but I'm going to say Islam.
Give me my underdog number 1 in Josh Emmett.
Okay, I'm going to go Yair.
I'm 99.9%. We're both going to agree on this of Jack Della Maddalena.
Yeah, give me Maddalena.
You talked me into Parker Porter. I'm going to go Parker Porter. Underdog number 2.
Yeah, I hope so. I don't trust him, but give me Parker Porter.
Give me underdog number 3, Alonzo Menified.
Yeah. Alonzo Menified for me. Underdog 2.
I'm hoping this is like Bellator last week and the dogs are come barking because I got some dogs here. I do like, obviously, if you've been listening to the show, Tyson Pedro is my play here.
Yeah, I like Tyson.
Melsik, I like him in this position against Josh.
Yeah, give me Melsik, another slight underdog.
I will take Rodrigues.
Rodrigues?
I think we're going to disagree here. Give me the favor in Jamie Mullarkey.
Okay,
I don't hate it. Give me 𝗃𝘀𝘀 Prado as another underdog for me.
Yeah, I think number 3 for you. I'll go Jack Jenkins.
Jack Jenkins for me.
𝗃𝗀𝗄𝗏. Underdog number 4 for me in Blake Builder.
Yeah, give me Blake Builder. Is that 5 for me? I like Builder, Prado, Melsik, Menified, Porter. Yeah, that's 5 underdogs for me. So 5th underdog, Blake Builder.
Melsik's a pick 'em fight.
Yeah, it's still slight underdog.
On the DK side of things. Yes.
On the DK side, yes, exactly. That's what we're talking.
And then Zubaira.
Yeah, Zubaira.
Let's talk about some of these props over at PrizePicks. Underdog, and then those lines over there at Super Draft. Let's start PrizePicks, and so here's the ones and by the way, PrizePicks does got a free square with Patrick Mahomes, so if you're playing over PrizePicks, be sure to take advantage of that. Everything I like on PrizePicks is on the preliminary card. I like the more 1.5 takedowns on Jamie Mullarkey, more 2 takedowns on 𝗃𝗀𝗄𝗏, and then I like the under 1.5 takedowns on Shane Young. I don't understand why that is, what that is. I would hop on that one right now. Also, I like the under 12.5 fight time minutes on Shane Young.
Yeah, so I'm with you that I like the Loma 𝗃𝗀𝗏𝗏 more than 2 takedowns. I like the less for Shane Young in the 1.5 takedowns. And I actually think that 𝗍𝗵𝗲 𝗠𝗠𝗔 more than 2.5 takedowns is another one that I'm going to be all over.
Yeah, now looking over at Underdog Fantasy, some of the ones that stick out to me, I like the more than a half finish for 𝗃𝗀𝗏 Makhachev. I like the more 1.5 takedowns on Jamie Mullarkey, more 2 takedowns on 𝗃𝗀𝗏𝗏, and I like the under 60.5 significant strikes on Shane Young.
Yeah, so pretty similar for me. The 2 plays that I like is the more for Loma 𝗃𝗀𝗏𝗏 2 takedowns and the more 2.5 takedowns for 𝗍𝗵𝗲 𝗠𝗠𝗔. So those are the 2 lines that stick out to me on Underdog.
Now over at Super Draft, what was interesting about Super Draft when I was there this morning is they had some fighters listed as out. I'm not sure exactly why that is, but they're not out of this fight. Well, unless there's some psychic telling you that they're not going to fight, but as far as we know right now, they are fighting. In terms of champion, I mean, look, if you think the main event is going 5 rounds, why do you not look at either one of those guys? Obviously, I like Makhachev to win. As an underdog at champion, I think Josh Emmett at a 2.2 multiplier, I think is pretty interesting. And the other ones I highlight in terms of Super Draft, and we just talked about this fight of Young and Builder, I think you got to look at both those sides, but it's probably it's a boom bust play.
Yeah, complete boom bust play, but I think that 2.1 for Builder is fine. 𝗃𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗏 and Jenkins there at 1.8. Like I really like those, just because I like target fights that are going to be one-way traffic, and that's how I'm projecting those fights to go.
Mention a question we got in Discord a little earlier today. FanDuel MVP suggestion. So, I mean, look, if you believe Makhachev and Volk is going 25 minutes and you believe that it's just going to be rinse and repeat for 𝗃𝗀𝗏 Makhachev, I think it's hard to avoid 𝗃𝗀𝗏 Makhachev as a MVP, but look, he is going to be extremely popular. I look at, other MVPs. I think I look at either guy in the co-main event in terms of that one. Other MVPs, Tyson, Pedro does stick out to me, but kind of concerned low volume, maybe not build up enough there. How about Jack Jenkins as a FanDuel MVP?
Yeah, I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. I think an interesting way too is not so much on FanDuel, I guess, but it's when you can get a cheaper fighter in that spot to help you pay for other spots. But like FanDuel, I do like getting to a high favorite in like a Jenkins or a 𝗍𝗵𝗀𝗍, just to basically have that safe winning score as a part of that top, and then I can get different elsewhere. But as if you want to be contrarian, you could always target the pick'em fights. So like you could always put that Melsik Baghdasaryan in that MVP spot, and I think that would separate yourself, a little bit from the pack.
You know who could be a super contrarian MVP?
Who?
Parker Porter.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Also got asked about a safe parlay. It was two parts: safe parlay / less safe parlay. So I know you love the play. You're there, obviously, in a state where you can legally wager on the fight. So what are you looking at for parlays this week?
I'd probably look at the under. I look at the under between Builder and Shane Young. I think that 𝗵𝗀𝗍𝗍 is a safe leg of the parlay. And I would also look at the under for Jamie Mullarkey, Francisco Prado. So that would probably be my 3-leg parlay, just targeting 2 unders in addition to 𝗵𝗀𝗍𝗍𝗍.
Going through some of the questions in the chat from earlier. Roman saying, usually on a pay-per-view card, you don't get a lot of underdog wins, but I feel like this weekend it's going to be different, at least 4.
Yeah, I have 5, so we'll see. I hope I have the 5 correct ones. That would suck if I have the 5 wrong ones. But, and that's where, like, I'm for my DFS lineups where I'm trying to get to, like, see which fights I'm leaning towards the underdog, but also making sure I'm getting to the other side as well. Like, okay, I got to switch this up because I like this fight. This fight seems like it's DFS friendly.
All right, we got the usual questions from Sam here. Let's start off with his over-under number, which is 8.5. It's a big number, big number.
Less. He's thinking 9 finishes? That's crazy.
Yeah, 13 fights.
I mean, I think that Rodrigues, is it crazy? I'm saying less. That's just naturally. That finishes, I don't think, happen.
I mean, like, if you start looking down the card and you start saying, okay, fights that you could see going the distance, I don't necessarily see the main event going the distance. I think there's a stoppage at some point on either side of that equation. Rodrigues, Emmett, I think has probably got a good chance to go 25 minutes.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Maddalena Brown, I think that's either a 3rd round finish or a decision.
Could, yep.
Tafa Porter, I God hope that is not a decision because
could be a sloppy heavyweight decision.
Yeah, those are not exactly fun fights to watch there. That's why I was a little surprised that got placed on the pay-per-view. Crute Menified, I don't think that's going to this decision. Pedro Bukauskas, no. Rodrigues Ross, maybe the next one that kind of sticks out to me as a potential decision.
Yep.
Mullarkey Prado, I think is another one to look at.
If history repeats itself, Loma via decision.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we know the statistics when it comes to female matchups. So Sam's got his other typical questions, so let's get right into those. Top 2 for cash.
Cash? I mean, you got to go Islam Makhachev. Top 2 for cash could honestly be stacking the fight, for cash, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's a way to get it's so cheap to get to Volkanovski. And as long as he doesn't get washed early, it could pay off. You're talking about one of the best. He's the pound for pound best fighter on the planet. It would be remarkable if Makhachev gets him out of there early. I think late's like more likely than early.
I'm just thinking about, Sam, in terms of how I'm building cash lineups. A core would be Tyson, Pedro, and 𝗍𝗵𝗀𝗍𝗍𝗍.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I like those.
I mean, look, you could say, Islam, and then I could, number 2, I could say Zubaira, but then, well, really hampered at what you can do in terms of building a roster. Top 2 GPPs. I mean, look, I'm looking at fights here. The young builder fight to me is a priority in terms of GPPs. And if I was going to say the number 2, I'd look at Menified and Crute.
Yeah, I have 3 circled: Builder Young, Mullarkey Prado, Crute Menified. Those seem like the 3 most slate-changing fights on the entire card.
Top 2 underdogs for me. Number 1 would be Big Builder, and number 2 would be Alonzo Menified.
I like Alonzo. I like Builder too. To give you somebody different, I mean, Melsik's a slight underdog. Does he count? No. I'll say Parker Porter.
Yeah. Favorite inside the distance. It's a young builder fight for me.
Yeah. I mean, favorite inside the distance. Yeah, I think that's the best one. Best fight to target. Outside of that, man, like there's so many matchups where you can just. I think Della Maddalena has some of the best inside the distance odds, and how I think the fight's going to go. It's going to be one hell of a performance if he does it, though. That's a tremendous win.
Top leverage plays. I mean, like, look, I look at Builder Young. I think the ownership should be way higher than what's being projected at right now. Luke Boomy would be another one that I think is a leverage play. I think you got to be looking in that 9,200 to 8,700 range to find that, in terms of how those are being projected in terms of ownership.
100%. 100%. I mean, like Tafa's, he's a great leverage play. And, I think that Porter's going to be the better minute winner, but Tafa has that one-shot Mark Hunt ability where, like, he hits you and then walks away. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that's an interesting spot. That salary tends to be forgotten a lot, similar to Shane Young. That salary gets forgotten all the time too.
Optimal and dart plays. Talking about dark plays, I mean, obviously Volkanovski you got though up there as a dart play, but like if you're looking at someone maybe as a dart play that maybe, how about Shannon Ross as a dart throw?
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate it. I mean, he's a dog. He's 13-6. He's fighting a kid who's 7-2. I think that he's going to be outmatched in several spots, but sometimes cardio wins out, and if he's in better shape. How about this? And I know you may not like this.
Okay.
How about as a complete decision dart, Modestas Bukauskas? Just if there's low volume Tyson Pedro doesn't find the finish.
I'm not against it. It's just in terms of what we've seen from Modestas inside the octagon. I have a lot of concerns about the stand up.
Me too.
And particularly if Tyson Pedro, we always talk about that the black line in the octagon where now this one will be the bigger octagon. So it's a 30-footer. So there's a little bit more room. But like when you think about the apex, if you get behind that black line, you're essentially a step and a half away from having your back up against the fence. That would be the kind of concern for me with Modestas Bukauskas. In terms of optimal plays, I mean, look, if 𝗍𝗏 Makhachev is optimal, that tells me this fight hits the 4th or 5th round. If 𝗍𝗏 Makhachev's in your lineup, I think the last thing you want is a first-round finish.
I would agree because it's very hard to pay off that salary with a first-round finish, especially when you have other 9,000 amazing picks. Like some weeks where we're like, I don't really like the 9,000 options. We got them this week. So different combinations are going to win out. I think that the best path for 𝗍𝗏 Makhachev to pay off that price tag is getting 10-plus takedowns.
Yeah. Any full fade or semi fades?
For me personally, it's probably Elise Reed. Just personally, but women's MMA tends to prove me wrong more often than not. When I look at Loma, she looks actually talented. When I look at Elise Reed, she's there. And I think outside the UFC, she can be fine. But inside the UFC, I think she's going to be matchup dependent, and I don't like this matchup for her.
Yeah, I mean, rarely in MMA do I necessarily uncheck someone. When I'm over in Fantasy Cruncher, Brenner may be someone like when I'm playing NASCAR DFS, I uncheck a lot of guys, those pump plays. But in terms of MMA, I usually don't do it. By the way, speaking of NASCAR, if you want to check out our guy Phil He's got some great stuff that he's doing over in Substack. Be sure to check out that. He's got, Phil did give me a free subscription, so I appreciate it. And his Substack looks absolutely amazing. And he's putting some great content if you're looking for NASCAR DFS coverage over there. In terms of Phil does, absolutely, I love doing shows with him back in the day. Try to get some, see if there's any other questions here. Of course, be sure to smash that like button. Most confident picks, favorite inside distance, even money parlay. We've kind of talked about inside distance. Confident picks for me would be, I would say Tyson, Pedro. 𝗍𝗏𝗏 would be the top two for me.
Yeah, I mean, confidence picks, 𝗍𝗏𝗏, 𝗍𝗵𝘀𝗀𝗏. Then you start getting into like tricky ones where they should win, but will they? But that's probably where I'd say where my confidence. I'm not even going to include Islam. I think that's a fight to sit back and watch and throw some fun money on some props instead of just paying that money line.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of looking at somewhat of an even parlay. I mean, if you want to take three big favorites, Makhachev, Maddalena, Pedro. That's plus 142 as a parlay.
Yeah, it seems a little. I mean, every now and then there's going to be one big favorite that's going to completely spoil that for you. So, if I view their opponents as talented opponents, I try not to get a little too cute in a situation like that, just chasing odds. That's why I don't believe in 𝗲𝘄𝐿. So 𝗍𝗵𝘀𝗀𝗏𝗏 is going to be somebody. I don't believe in 𝗍𝗵𝘀𝗀𝗏. 𝗍𝗏𝗏 is going to be somebody. It's kind of hard for me to say I don't believe in Alexander Volkanovski, but styles make fights. And that's where I'm a little bit more selective when it comes to betting, and I'll bet heavier on sure wins rather than getting a little too cute.
If Volkanovski does pull this off, it's going to be kind of interesting to see kind of what is the narrative after this one, especially when we start talking about the greatest fighters in our sports history. He goes out there and does that. He is going to be a part of that conversation. Of course, we appreciate everyone tuning in here for our UFC 284 preview. Of course, if you smash that thumbs up button, if this is your first time catching us, you can hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Myself and Pete, we're trying to get this over 1,000 subscribers so we can monetize this channel. Of course, if you're listening to us on the podcasting platforms, be sure to leave a 5-star rating and review. That does help us a lot as well. Pete, anything you want to mention before we get out of here for this week?
No, I just want to say thanks for the support, guys. Really appreciate it. Make sure you join the Discord. It's free, and we like to just kind of have a nice conversation within the community. Each week we keep dropping these videos for you. We appreciate everybody tuning in, hitting that like button for us, and can't wait to see what the future holds. And hopefully this card lives up to the hype. I hope it's a good card. Unfortunately, I can't watch it, but hopefully we can cash in on some of these underdogs and win some money.
And you never know. Sometimes I like to drop a little nuggets in that Discord that
yeah.
maybe you don't hear anywhere else, So we appreciate everyone tuning in here. That is going to do it for our preview for UFC 284. Appreciate everyone checking out the show. We will talk to you next week right here on Fight HQ.